And the Padres are dead. Welcome.
Could one of y'all pass the gosh darn rock? Hey, yo, I'm trying, I ain't lying, and hosting this will be Brian. He posting like Kobe Bryant, he flying to see the pilot. Hit the hezzy, we got Jesse, opinions get kinda messy. A fan of Adeleti's, from football to racing jet skis. This is pass the rock, don't stop the shot clock. Pass the slap shot, come on, now let's talk. Pass the rock.
Good afternoon. Another great weekend of sports if you're a Dodgers fan, and that's just how it's been the last several years. But Jack, how are you feeling after this weekend?
Oh, man, it was a hell of a weekend. I had a wonderful time watching those games. I'm sure you didn't have the same experience that I did, but I went to the game on Saturday night. LA was rocking. Cool. It was a great time, and I'm excited to see this series going forward.
Yeah. No, look, it's not a rivalry until both teams are winning. That's what I tell my Falcons fans all the time. So, Zach, how was your weekend? What area of sports were you kind of focused on?
You know, it was a great weekend to be a Phillies fan. They set a new franchise record for most home runs in a series. We hit 14 balls out of the park this past weekend, and we also moved up in the wild card standings. So I had a really good weekend. So, yeah.
Yeah, no, it was. It's nice when you have the trade deadline and then you can see how things start to play out. And, we'll get to all that. I got too many thoughts about that. We'll get to in a second. Bigger news. I would say it's breaking news, but it's been out for a few days, so I'm not going to press the breaking news button just yet. The Mariners adopting a puppy named Tucker. So, Zach, I know you love player comps, and your player comps are always to the exact same MLB player. I'll let you take it away.
Well, I actually found that the manager, Scott Surveys, I guess that's how you say it.
Yeah, Service.
He compared Tucker to Ty France, saying puppy is laid back and California cool. So if Tucker does anything remotely close to what Ty France did in April, I think it's going to work out. I mean, he was great in April for me in fantasy. So I'm a big fan of this move for the Mariners. I think it'll be great for the upcoming playoff push.
I think we'd all be kind of chill if we could just live in a stadium all the time, Once got to hang out at the San Francisco Giants stadium on the field as part of JCC Maccabi, and I didn't want that night to end for sure. So moving on, fantasy football coming up. I know both of you boys are going to try to compete with Jesse and I and everybody else in the staff league. We are doing fantasy football for the community. So if you want to join, go to our website, losttribe.org/event/fantasy football. You can sign up now. We're setting up the leagues as we speak. Also, we are going to have a fantasy football, our live draft stream for our staff league, Monday, August 29th, as part of Pass the Rock, 7 p.m. on Twitch. So check that out. We'll do a little 15-minute preview, and then we'll get right into the draft. You can throw your thoughts in the comment section. You can tell Jack who to draft because sometimes he gets a little confused. He likes to go tight end way too early. So give him your thoughts, and we're going to run through it all. It'll be a lot of fun. I did talk to Jesse yesterday. He'll be back on the 22nd, and then obviously that'll be on the 29th. But tons of fantasy football content for the rest of the fall. So really excited to go with that. Today, we will have our traditional NFC West player draft. And I didn't even pull together my list. So that's going to be a fun exercise when we get there. So let's get to some sad news. Jack, I'll let you take it away. Vin Scully passing away at the age of 94. We learned this last week, I think, after the show ran. So your thoughts on Vin?
Oh, man, where do I even start? I mean, absolute legend, just the voice of my childhood. I mean, the guy, if you grew up in Los Angeles, you know Vin. It doesn't matter if you're a baseball fan or not. You just, whenever you were growing up, riding in the car, on the freeway, stuck in traffic because it's LA, you turn on the radio and you listen to Vin because that's just what everyone did. And I mean, just such a great man, a great person, an even better broadcaster. I mean, it really sucks, but he lived a full life and he lived it to the absolute max. So I love Vin, rest in peace, and forever Dodger legend.
Yeah, may we all live to 94, by the way.
Absolutely.
No matter what it is we're doing. Zach, any thoughts on Vin Scully? Any relationship there?
I mean, he's just an iconic voice in the world of baseball. I mean, I didn't grow up with Vin myself. I grew up with Harry Kalas, same kind of feeling, but he passed away a lot sooner in my childhood, so I've gotten used to the new voices of the Phillies. But I mean, he meant a lot to the Dodgers. He meant a lot to baseball. Not much else you can really say. He did live a full life, thankfully. So yeah.
Yeah, and was a football commentator for quite a while as well. I can remember watching the Kirk Gibson home run against Dennis Eckersley in 1988, and he was doing the national broadcast on NBC, and obviously trying to remain a innocent bystander, but a Dodger fan. And what a moment for a guy that could barely walk out there to come out and hit the home run.
Yeah.
Eckersley was untouchable.
Yeah, I've got to say, if you're a fan of baseball at all, you should listen to Vin Scully's call of Sandy Koufax's no-hitter in 1965, the Kirk Gibson home run in 1988, and Clayton Kershaw's no-hitter in 2014. Those are the three best baseball calls of his career, and in my opinion, the three best baseball calls of all time.
There you go. Nice. So, so rest in peace, Vin. Still cheering for the Dodgers. I think that's the only reason they won. They swept the series this weekend. They just, the Padres could have beaten the Dodgers. They can't beat Vin and the Dodgers. So, but we'll talk more about that. Kareem Hunt requested trade. And let me just say that last year I had a lot of Kareem Hunt, and all I wished was for him to get onto another team where he could get the full complement of carries. Thoughts, Zach, on Kareem Hunt? Do you think he actually gets dealt, and what's a team or two you think can benefit there?
I honestly don't know if he's going to get dealt. I haven't really heard much about Kareem Hunt's, teams of interest. I haven't really heard anything yet. If he does get traded, I'm immediately going to be looking up who the Browns' third-string running back is, just for fantasy value in the future. Wherever he goes, do I think he could be a lead back? Probably, but I mean, I'm not going to be. I might stay away from him in more fantasy leagues just because I liked him more as an insurance back than as a as the first guy to be running the ball. So it's going to be interesting to see where he goes. There's a lot of teams that still might want some running back depth. So going to keep an eye on Kareem Hunt.
Yeah, I think Dearness Johnson would probably be that name, that third stringer that would step up into that role. It doesn't seem they're interested in trading him. I think they like having that two-headed backfield, which, probably 60% of the league employs in some way at this point. But he's just a guy, I think, with so many two running back backfields, I think you like to see people get an opportunity to be the number one. And he would shoot way up the fantasy football rankings, I think, if he was to be traded to a team where he would be the primary. So we'll see how that falls in. Let's move on. MLB trade deadline is over. Now everybody's got their new toys. In some cases, like the Nationals, they're all AA prospects. But there's a lot of people in the MLB that have switched teams. What is your favorite move of the deadline at this point, Jack, after we've had a week to kind of look through everything?
Yeah, I think my favorite move was still the one that it was at the time, which is the Luis Castillo trade to the Mariners. To me, it signaled the Mariners are trying to compete, which above all is amazing that they're like in the position that they're like, okay, this is our year. We're going to actually try to go for this thing. And Luis Castillo was a guy that was stuck in Cincinnati his entire career, was an ace, but no one ever got to saw him because he played in Cincinnati. So I've been his first start for the Mariners wasn't like his best stuff, but I'm just really excited to see him going forward. And I really, above all, just love the signals that the Mariners are giving off. I mean, they're really going for it.
Yeah, and it's weird. He was a big name at the beginning, and then the Soto thing became so big that it was kind of an afterthought. He got dealt kind of early within that last couple of days. So I think it's going to be a huge piece for them. We'll see if they can continue to compete. Zach, going to you, favorite deal of the deadline at this point?
Man, I mean, I don't want to be a homer for this one. I'm going to save all my love for the Phillies for a little bit later. But I really like what the Twins did, getting a lot of, starting pitching. I really like an under-the-radar move with Tyler Mahle. I mean, from the Reds, I thought, that was like another Red being traded here as a favorite move. But Tyler was, that guy was really under the radar. Only a few teams really seem to be interested in him. I think it's a really good get for Minnesota, actually. He provides pretty quality starting pitching. So he'll be a reliable 3-4 starter for them, and I think it'll be good because Minnesota – is looking to compete, which surprised me all of a sudden, just being like, oh, they're actually competing this year. So seeing them go all in on starting pitching and especially getting a reliable 3-4 guy, I really like that for Minnesota.
Yep. I think those are both good moves. I actually like what the Nationals did. The guy didn't want to play there. He turned down 440 million. So let's scoop up all these prospects. Now the key, and as being a fan of a team that likes to, hoard their prospects and finally gave them up this year, they have to find a time. When is the right time to really move on those things? Every prospect's not going to make it. Or not going to be an unbelievable MLB player. So the key is to duck and weave and be shrewd about that. We'll see if the Nationals can do it. I don't really know why they haven't all of a sudden have such a negative look from the players, or at least from Soto after winning the World Series a couple years ago. But I get it. He's moved on. We'll talk more about that in a second. They have to do something with that. And that was what I was complaining about with San Diego for years and years and years. If you're just going to hold these prospects, then that's not getting you anywhere. So if they do anything with that, those folks that they got, then I think they win this, and we'll see it in a couple of years. So who's the biggest winner of the deadline? Back to you, Zach.
Man, I would have said Padres if the results so far had been a little bit better. I feel like on paper we're all saying Padres because the Padres got the biggest win with Juan Soto and Josh Hader in the same trade deadline. That is insane. But right now the results have not really proven that they're the biggest winner. So I'm gonna go between Yankees and Phillies right now. Yes, I'm being a homer, but the Yankees made a lot of small moves that subtly improved their team. The Phillies made 3 small moves that also filled in, pretty important needs. I mean, I know Andrew Benintendi's not doing so well right now, but they got some good pitchers. And the Phillies filled in their 3 needs. They had 3 needs. They needed a center fielder, they needed a starting pitcher, and why am I blanking on my own team's trades? That's pretty sad.
It is.
Well,
and the Yankees got swept this weekend too. Let's not forget.
That's true. And the Phillies didn't. So I guess the Phillies are the big winners. Boom. All right, Phillies are the big winners. But getting Syndergaard and Marsh were both really good moves. I mean, Marsh bringing a lot of defensive utility, and then Syndergaard being a pretty decent start. He struggled in his first appearance, but then he summoned the power of lightning and got the game stopped at 5 innings. So I mean, he pitched a complete game for us first game. I think that's pretty impressive. So. Yeah, I'm going to say Yankees and Phillies both had really good trade deadlines besides the Padres.
All right, going to you, Zach. Who's your winner?
I'm
sorry, Jack.
I'm going to stick to the Padres because I think that everybody is severely overreacting to the first 6 games it's been since the deadline. They went 1-5, got their asses handed to them by the Dodgers. But I really do think that their deadline was impeccable. I mean, you get a generational talent in Juan Soto that's under contract for 2.5 years, even if you can't re-sign him to a long-term deal. Josh Bell was a throw-in in that trade, and he's just a great baseball player in his own right. Brandon Drury was one of the most underrated moves of the deadline. He has had a phenomenal season in Cincinnati, and he came over to the Padres, and I think he hit a homer, if not in his first at-bat. It was like really early on. He was. It
was a grand slam in his first at bat as a Padre. First time that's ever happened.
He's continuing his hot streak. I really like Brandon Drury and Josh Hader was also an incredible trade. I think that we're overreacting to a really small sample size with the Padres, and by the end of the year, it's going to prove for them to be just an unbelievable deadline.
Well, and look, I think you're right. Look, we were behind the Dodgers 12.5 going into the series. Now it's 15.5 because the Padres got swept. I don't believe they were ever going to catch the Dodgers for the NL West. So it's all about making the playoffs and then rolling out your best lineup at that point, which will include Tatis. I agree with you 100% that Drury was probably the most impactful smaller move. And he can play either corner outfield position. He can play second. He can play third. So he's going to be huge, especially when Tatis comes back and they have to kind of reshuffle some things. So I do think they're the winners because ultimately it's even if they don't, go to or win the World Series this year, they're there for the next several years. And this was the key piece. So a huge day for them. I think they're the big winner. Who is the big loser in this? I'm going to go first. I'm going to tell you that it's the Cubs. I don't know why they couldn't get rid of any players, but they made no trades. Wilson Contreras, they said goodbye to everyone, and then they didn't get to actually go anywhere. So I think the Cubs really missed an opportunity to kind of seize and, grab a few prospects, look forward to next year and move along. Zach, going back to you, who's your big loser from the trade deadline?
The clear-cut answers would be like the Nationals and the Brewers, but they aren't my big losers because the Nationals got a good haul of prospects, so did the Brewers. The Mets didn't do enough to really solidify themselves, as they believe that they are World Series contenders, but the Mets always seem to struggle late in the season. They didn't do anything that really says, hey, they're going to be going into the playoffs with smooth sailing. Like, no, I can see the Mets struggling in August and September, and I can see them just, getting into the playoffs and just not being, a World Series contender. So the Mets didn't do nearly enough to address their issues. Getting Jacob deGrom back is great for anyone's deadline because he came back from injury, but their biggest deadline get was Vogelback from the Pirates. And let's be real, great player to watch, pretty fun watching him run the bases. He's not taking you to the World Series. That's not, an odds shifting move. So the Mets didn't do anything. And it really, I think they're the biggest loser because they're trying to compete for a World Series. Meanwhile, you have two other 60-win teams in your division. Nothing's really stopping them right now. So, yeah.
Yeah, the NL is going to be exciting. I think the AL comes down to Astros, Yankees, but the NL's got a lot of teams that could step up into that, that NLCS. So, Jack, who is your biggest loser at the deadline?
Yeah, so the obvious answer is the Brewers because the Josh Hader trade really made no sense for them. But to me, the team that really had me scratching my head was the Red Sox. I have no idea what they were thinking at the deadline because they, at first, early on, they looked like they were going to be a selling team because they traded Christian Vazquez to the Astros. I believe that was the day before the deadline. So they seemed like, okay, maybe JD Martinez gets traded. Maybe they probably don't make the move on Bogarts, but maybe they listen to offers. But I felt like if they were going to trade Vazquez, they had to at least trade Martinez and at least think about trading Bogarts. But they didn't really do anything. Instead, they bought veterans. They got Eric Hosmer. They brought in Tommy Pham, which is a good move if you're a team that's contending and you're trying to get your team better for this season. But they traded their starting catcher. So they sort of try to do this thing where they're buying and selling at the same deadline, which just made no sense. So they're really just going to be stuck in this purgatory they have been the whole year, and the deadline should have been the time for them to get out of it. But I think they just made their problem worse.
Yeah. Well, before we move on to our NFC West preview, just to put a little bow on this baseball coverage, what the hell, Padres? All right. You won. Obviously, both these guys behind you as far as what you did at the deadline. I know it's only been 5 games, but we need to hit the ball. Okay, that was our issue all season. It'd be great to get Tatis back, but Soto's on Sunday Night Baseball last night in the middle of a conversation. Why they interview the players, I get it. It's interesting when it's not your team. When it's my team, I'm like, shouldn't he be paying attention to wherever this ball's going to go? Okay, great viewership on that home run, the first home run by Cody Bellinger last night. It's time to buckle down. All right, we are not guaranteed anything. The Phillies, as Zach pointed out to me over the weekend, a lot closer than they might appear in our rearview mirror. So let's get it together. We have the pitching to compete. Now we have no excuse from the bat on the batting side. Brandon Drury's the only one that's done anything since he's been with us. So get it together. It starts tonight on MLB Network against the Giants. Let's go. All right, moving on.
If you're going to have your old man take, I got to have my young guy take. God bless the Phillies. We are finally beating teams that we are supposed to beat. We swept the Nationals, like I said earlier. First, a franchise record for home runs. We actually have an issue of thinking, what's going to happen to guys that came off the bench? Are they going to be playing next year? That's an actual issue that people are discussing. They're worried about bench pieces instead of starters. We don't have to worry about anyone in our starting lineup. This is a huge revelation that Philly fans haven't had in probably a decade, where we don't have to actually worry about any of our starters. That's kind of nuts. We actually don't have to worry about any of our starters. We released Didi Gregorius, so Bryson Stott's now our shortstop for the remainder of the season. Second base, Gene Segura just came back, and Nick Matone has played in 4 games, and he's homered in 3 of them. So he's on our bench, and he's just clobbering baseball whenever he gets a chance to play. I mean, the only real starting issue is, Gene Segura still needs to get back to speed. Other than that, I love the Phillies right now. We actually look really good for once, and that's kind of crazy. I don't think we're going to be competing for a World Series, but I just want to make the playoffs again. I'm going to be so excited when that happens. So,
two things. First of all, it's not in the outline for a young guy take. So
Who
all
bet?
of this is just
Who bet?
fluff. Number two, you
Who bet?
obviously don't believe in the baseball gods because you just said we don't have to worry about our starting lineup. Now is when the injuries are just going to start popping off.
Look, Harper's
I'm just
still
saying,
injured.
watch the IR or the IL the next week because it's going to be full of Phillies because you just jinxed your team. Good luck.
No.
All right, let's move on to the NFC West because I'm not even going to let Jack weigh in on that one because it's too crazy. So, NFC West, Rams, Cardinals, 49ers, Seahawks, one of the better divisions in football over the last couple of years. The question is it still there? So let's start with the Rams. First in 2021 in the NFC West, they were 12-5, obviously won the Super Bowl in a tight game against Joe Burrow and the Bengals. With the addition of Bobby Wagner, is this the best defense since the Legion of Boom? Zach?
Oh, man. I mean, you do have a superstar defensive, on the defensive line, you have Aaron Donald, you have a superstar cornerback in Jalen Ramsey, and now you have Bobby Wagner, who's still very good at his position, if not, a little past his prime. I'm not sure if this is the best defense this Legion of Boom, but certainly up there with them. I mean, this could be a really scary defense if everything comes together this year. And I mean, people are going to be like, oh, the offense is already pretty good with, Matt Stafford, Cooper Kupp. I think this defense could be underrated depending on, how production levels out. I mean, it's a very scary defensive unit. So I'm excited to see it.
Jack, weigh in on that. Are they the best defense since the Legion of Boom? And also, are they the favorites in the NFC to return to the Super Bowl?
Well, I think they're absolutely the favorites to return to the Super Bowl. I can start there. I think that they have gotten better. I think their Super Bowl team last year was obviously an incredible team, well-deserving of that ring. And I think they're better. I mean, they added Allen Robinson on offense, which is an underrated pickup. And I think he'll do a lot better now that he actually has a quarterback to throw him the ball. And defensively, Bobby Wagner, maybe he's not what he used to be, but he's still Bobby Wagner. He's still an incredible linebacker and a force to be reckoned with in the middle of the field. The Rams are better than they were last year. They have to be the favorites. And as far as them being the best defense, it's the Legion of Boom. It's tough because, I mean, there's just been so many great defenses, I feel like, over the years. That one that sticks out in my mind is that Broncos defense in the year they beat the Panthers in the Super Bowl. That defense was unreal. So that's probably the top contender in my mind. But the Rams defense has to be up there. I mean, you have probably 3 future Hall of Famers on this defense that are pretty close to the height of their powers, if not there in the case of Donald and Ramsey. So
that Broncos defense in Super Bowl 50 won them that game. Peyton Manning had very little to do with that. Cam Newton had a lot to do with it because he was, standing up looking at fumbles as they were on the ground. But and I agree with you. This is going to be a great defense. I think yes, they are the Super Bowl or the NFC heavyweights here. We got to figure out how to catch up to them. But I think the Bucs are going to have a really good defense. I think the Saints are going to have a really good defense. I'm interested to see what else, and that's just in the NFC side of things. So I'm a little, Matt Stafford having a little bit of an injury issue in training camp doesn't worry me for the regular season. But let's remember, he's not 30 years old anymore. So it'll be interesting to see. Last year, they were really lucky, didn't have any major injuries, maybe other than Cam Akers. And so, we'll see what they can do with that. Cardinals, second in 2021. I actually forgot that they were second and the 49ers were third when I went to write our notes. 11-6 last year, lost in the wild card to the Rams, and it was a pretty decisive victory there. How much do you think DeAndre Hopkins being out for 6 games impacts their overall, chance to win the division, chance to get into the playoffs, Zach?
I mean, you look at their first 6 games, and they are, it's a bit tough. I mean, you open with the Chiefs, then you go you open hosting the Chiefs, then you go to Las Vegas, then you host Los Angeles, the Rams, and then you have, I think you have like 2 easier games, but you also have the Eagles in the middle of them. You have the Panthers and the Seahawks. So you're talking about Chiefs, Raiders, Rams, Eagles, 4 playoff contenders in the first 6 games, and then you have the Panthers and Seahawks. You could make a reasonable case saying that they will go without DeAndre Hopkins 2-4 in those first 6 games. And starting 2-4, not a death sentence for any team trying to make a playoff push, but certainly not going to help them.
And let's be real.
Like
after that,
2-3.
After that, you still have the 49ers twice and the Rams another time. It is interesting, and the Chargers and the Broncos. So, yeah, it's interesting that they play the AFC West. What we'll probably say is the strongest division in football. And Kyler Murray's got to prove himself a little bit. Is he just? This is to Jack. Is he just a great fantasy quarterback, or can he actually lead his team to playoff victories a long stretch through the playoffs?
Yeah, it's really tough because athletically, he's one of the most gifted quarterbacks that we've ever seen, in my opinion. He's super fast. He's got a great arm. You could argue that his mental mechanics aren't all the way there yet, but that's something that can be improved over time. But honestly, the thing that holds this team back, I don't think it's Kyler. I think it's Cliff Kingsbury. I am not a fan of him and his play calling. I don't think it works at the NFL level. I think it's way too gimmicky and collegey. And he didn't really have much success with it in college anyway. So right. I was honestly astounded when he got the Cardinals job in the first place. But that's besides the point. I think the reason they don't make a run this year is Kingsbury and not Kyler. I think Kyler has a very good season. And I think we see Kingsbury fired at the end of the year.
Okay, but if Kingsbury's fired, that means Kyler probably hasn't won a playoff game either. So my question to you, Zach, in his career, Kyler Murray over under 2.5 playoff victories. 2.5 over under Kyler Murray.
Yeah. I'm personally going to take the under on this one. I just know the Cardinals have a long, long history of just being a bit disappointing every now and then. Never won a Super Bowl, never won a championship. But I mean, I like Kyler Murray, especially in fantasy. I'm not as high on him in reality. I'm higher on him in fantasy. The pieces just aren't all there for the Cardinals in the near future. I mean, they just traded a first for Hollywood Brown. I mean, that's not a really good move. I mean, even though it's for DeAndre Hopkins insurance, we're not saying that Hollywood Brown's going to be the next DeAndre Hopkins or even close to that. I just don't think Kyler or the Cardinals are set up for any success, at least in the near future. Can I see Kyler Murray winning 2 playoff games? Sure. But more than that, I don't think so.
Well, before we go to Jack because I know he'll have a different opinion on this over-under, the Chicago Cardinals won the NFL championship in 1925 and 1947. So they have not won a Super Bowl.
Oh, my goodness.
But I'm going to prove you wrong. The Chicago Cardinals did win 2. Jack, to you, 2.5 over-under Kyler Murray total playoff victories in his career.
Yeah, I mean, in his career, I think it's absolutely going to be over because I think once he gets out of the shadow of Cliff Kingsbury, we're going to see a whole new quarterback. I really think that with the right coaching, he's going to explode and be a top 3 quarterback in the league. And you're going to have a debate for top 1, but I'm not going to go that far yet. I just think he needs to get out of Kingsbury's shadow. And I don't think this year is the year that they go on a playoff run because unfortunately they're still stuck with him. But whoever the next guy is and whenever he gets in there, that's when we're going to see Kyler explode.
Yeah, so here's my comparison with him. I think he is definitely not the athlete that Michael Vick was, but a very similar type quarterback. Can be accurate at times, but not accurate overall. I do not think that he'll get a lot of playoff victories. I think it'll be under the 2.5. So I looked up Michael Vick just to see how many he had. 2 playoff victories in his career.
Wow.
So I think it's pretty equal to that. I do agree with you. Cliff Kingsbury is not the coach that's going to, get the most out of him from an NFL standpoint. I think he'll get a lot out of him when it comes to fantasy, and a lot of people will be excited to have him. But I think he's under the 2.5 as well. And it's hard to say, now he's so young. All it takes, I mean, you can accidentally win a playoff game, right? Or you can play terribly and have a great defense and win a playoff game. But, I mean, Trent Dilfer won a Super Bowl. So, that kind of thing could happen. Obviously, I think Kyler Murray's better than Trent Dilfer, just so just so we're clear. But I do think he'll have less. We'll see how it plays out. He got a bad draw last year having to play the Rams. So 49ers were third in 2021, 10-7, got all the way to the NFC Championship game because they just beat the Packers. Just can't win on divisional weekend. So they went up there and won. Smart or dumb move? You had a team right on the doorstep of the Super Bowl. They only lost by 3 to the Rams in the NFC Championship. Smart or dumb to put Trey Lance into the starting quarterback role when you had Jimmy G and you kind of went on a run? I'll give it to you first, Jack.
I think it's smart. I think that what we saw of them last year, the Niners last year, and also the year that they lost the Chiefs in the Super Bowl, I think that was about the ceiling that you were going to get out of that team with Jimmy Garoppolo at quarterback. And I think that the front office knew that. I think Kyle Shanahan knew that. And I think that's exactly why they took Trey Lance last year. And Kyle Shanahan, Trey Lance, I've said this on this podcast before, that I think that Trey Lance is the quintessential Kyle Shanahan quarterback, and he's going to turn him into a superstar. And I'm just so unbelievably excited to see what he does with them in this offense this year. The 49ers are going to be one of my favorite teams to watch this season, and just because I'm so excited to see Trey Lance. I can't even put it into words. But I think it's a smart move. I think that he's going to do very well as a rookie. And I think that the 49ers are going to be a playoff team at least this year, but with Trey Lance.
Okay, back over to you, Zach. Will the league catch up to what Deebo Samuel's been able to do the last couple of years? Or do you think he's just too good and Kyle Shanahan can move him around and put him in different positions? He did say in the offseason he didn't want to play running back, but he is practicing kind of at both positions this summer.
Yeah, I mean, now we have a bit more tape on Deebo Samuel. All the NFL teams probably have tape on him, especially teams that are going to be prepping for him, especially in the division. I don't think he stopped this year just because Kyle Shanahan's a really good offensive mind, but I feel like this might be the last year where Deebo's really taking that big step as as a hybrid player, running back, wide receiver. I feel like he's going to settle into a role sooner or later where it's a little more traditional. I kind of get that feeling from when the Wildcat was big. The Wildcat was big. A bunch of teams around the league did it, and then it just died once teams knew how to counter it. So once teams figure out how to counter it, probably not this season, next season, we're not going to see that as much. So that's kind of how I'm thinking. I think this year it's going to be good. It's going to be good for Deebo. It's going to be good for fantasy value. Next year, might want to sleep on it.
Okay. We'll see if he can play some more traditional wide receiver, which he says he wants to do. And we'll see if Trey Lance is accurate enough to get him the ball consistently. Seahawks, 4th in 2021, 7-10. They trade Russell Wilson. They have just a gaggle of mediocre quarterbacks. So to you, let's go back to you, Zach. Has Pete Carroll lost his mojo? Is he too old to compete? Is it time for him to move on?
I mean, it's just been a weird situation in Seattle for the past couple of years. You've been hearing rumors about Pete Carroll leaving, Russell Wilson leaving. You heard that for the past 3 years. Just one of them's going to leave. It's going to happen. And then it doesn't happen. It finally did happen. Russell Wilson is now a Bronco. Mm-hmm. And now Pete Carroll's there. He's done with his franchise quarterback. I mean, he's had a long tenure both in USC and for the Seattle Seahawks. I don't want to say he's lost his mojo, but it certainly seems like it's a bit dated at this point. I mean, you don't have Russell Wilson as a safety cap anymore to be like, all right, we still have a little bit of faith in the team. He is gone. You don't have that safety valve anymore. So I think he might have lost his mojo, and I don't think he's going to be coaching in Seattle too much longer. It's kind of weird, almost sad to say, because I only remember the Seahawks because it's that's Pete Carroll and Russell Wilson's team, and it's starting to come apart after all these years. So kind of sad to see, but Father Time is undefeated.
Yeah, he's 70, which isn't totally out of the realm of an NFL coach to be that old. I'm sure Belichick is right there. But I think what happens is what happened with Sean Payton. I think he coaches 1 year without Russell Wilson. It's a total disaster this year. They're in a tough division. They have no quarterback, whatever. They're one of their better running backs retired. So I think in the end, it's going to be terrible. He goes off into the sunset, and somebody's got a brand new opportunity next year, perhaps with the number 1 overall pick. And the Seahawks are back in a few years. To you, Jack, is Drew Lock a true NFL quarterback? This might be his last opportunity to be a starter. Not saying he can't be a backup for most of his career, but do you have any faith that he's going to make this work?
Not at all. Drew Lock is terrible. I'm so sick of watching Drew Lock, and I honestly can't believe that he's about to get another opportunity to see the field in the NFL. He is awful. Like he has no accuracy. His mental quarterback skills are just not there whatsoever. He can't read a play. He's a first read quarterback. He has arm strength. That's the only thing that he has going for him. But he is just not good at all. I mean, he's almost makes me more mad watching him than Mason Rudolph, and that's really saying something. I cannot believe that he's getting another opportunity to play quarterback. I think this year's going to be a train wreck for the Seahawks with him at the helm, and I think they're going to have the number 1 overall pick.
Hey, Jack, you know what Seattle quarterback I'm excited to watch?
What's this?
Former Mountaineer Geno Smith, baby. We already know if Seattle's going to be as bad as we all think they're going to be, he's definitely going to get some starts. He might actually have a chance to win the starting job.
Yeah.
I just like seeing a Mountaineer out on the field. So I mean, I'm cheering a little bit for Geno Smith, but we know that Seattle's quarterback room is just terrible this year.
I think Geno's better than Drew Lock. I would rather Drew Lock.
Geno had some really good games last year. Let's not forget.
Yeah,
I don't think he's going to resurrect his career by any means, but
And even for the Jets,
he's not going to resurrect his career, but I don't think Geno's leagues above Drew Lock or anything. I mean, he might be a little bit better, but still, I'm just saying it'll be nice to see a Mountaineer on the field.
So let's move on to our final standings predictions because we got a fantasy draft to get to. So going through the questions, over under 1.5 playoff teams, you can just go through your division rankings and tell us who makes the playoffs and who doesn't. Obviously, that will give us the division champion. Are there any Super Bowl contenders or how many? And how do you see it working out? So Zach, we'll start with you.
All right, so division champion, it's going to be the Rams. There's really no major competition against them. I can see the Niners finishing in second place here. I'm going to pick that to happen, but I don't think they're going to make the playoffs. I think it's a very competitive NFC, very competitive NFC this year. You have Trey Lance basically in his rookie year leading an offense. I think he might struggle a bit more than people expect. I still think they're going to be second in the division, but I think just with that hyper competitiveness, it's going to be, really tough. I have the Cardinals finishing close at third. I think it's going to be very similar to how it's, like a 1-win difference from last year. This is going to be similar, but, I'm predicting a 2-4, 3-3 start. It's a little hard to bounce back, from 2-4, especially. So, and then I'm going to have the Seahawks. They're going to get Bryce Young in this upcoming draft, and they're going to be able to turn around then. But until they get Bryce Young, it's not going to be good football in Seattle. And Super Bowl contenders, it's got to be the Rams. Plain and simple. They're like Jack said, they're better than they are last year. Very impressive.
Yep. So before we move on to you, Jack, it's interesting when you have these tougher divisions how I think we might align a little more on how it ends up filling out rather than like when we were picking the AFC South and because you just have a crapshoot of terrible teams. So to you, Jack, and your lineup for the NFC West.
I agree with Zach for the most part. I think the Rams are the division champions. I think that they're the only true Super Bowl contender in the division. I think they win the division easily. Second place, I also have the 49ers, but I absolutely think the Niners are a playoff team. I think that of those, they're not. I don't think they have a shot at the division because of how good the Rams are. But I think that of the wild card teams in the NFC, between like the Saints and the Eagles, the Cardinals, the Cowboys, whoever's in that range, I think they're towards the top half of them. And I think that they finish as the 5 or 6 seed. And then the Cardinals, I have in third. It's going to be really, really interesting to see where they end up. I think that they're going to be right around the 7 seed. I wouldn't be surprised if they sneak in, but I honestly don't think they will. I think Cliff Kingsbury's going to choke again, and the Cardinals are going to miss out in the playoffs. And like I said earlier in the show, I think he gets fired after this year. And the Seahawks are in fourth because they are atrocious, and I really hope I don't have to watch very much of them this year.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with the order: Rams, 49ers, Cardinals, and Seahawks. What I will say is, You have 2 teams from the South that make it in the NFC. I think you have 2 teams from the East that make it. I think you have 2 teams from the West, and that leaves only 1 team for the North. So obviously the Vikings could step up, or the Packers, depending on what goes on. Maybe the Lions. The Bears are dead. But you will see, there's a lot of teams in there, but I think 2 make it out of the West, and I think it'll be the 49ers and the Rams. I agree with you that Kingsbury could be gone after this year if they have a disastrous start, which I think they will, 2-4 or worse. And the schedule doesn't get any easier. Like you were saying, they play the Bucs, they play the Saints, they still have the Rams, they still have 2 against the 49ers. So it's going to be tough for the Cardinals to catch back up if they can't get a good start, and they'll have to do it without Hopkins. So let's move on to our fantasy draft. So again, the 4 teams from the NFC West only. We get 1 quarterback, 1 running back, 1 receiver, and 1 flex. And I have made the order. It'll be me, then Zach, then Jack. Last week we had Zach, Jack, me, so we're switching it up a little bit. So I'm picking first, and I'm taking Cooper Kupp all day long, and every other pick I can take him. I love the guy. Obviously, we're playing in a PPR league, so he's going to get me a ton of points just by catching the ball, and I don't think anybody's going to be able to figure out what he's doing. He's still young enough, and give me Cooper Kupp.
All right. I like that pick, but I'm going to go with the de facto fantasy best player right now. It's got to be Deebo Sanu. I mean, playing running back and wide receiver. I mean, honestly, in any fantasy setting, if it was PPR, non-PPR, he's going to be good in your league regardless. I think I've been taking safe picks this entire time when we've been doing drafts, but I think he's the safest, as just being the top guy in this division. So I'm going to go Deebo Sanu. Pretty easy pick.
Okay. Huh. All right. So
it kind of falls a little bit after that.
It falls a little bit. My situation is it's a little bit of a predicament. I think that honestly the receivers in this division are really deep. So I'm not too worried about securing any of the receivers at this point with the top 2 off the board. So I think I have 2 picks back to back. I think my first pick has to be Kyler Murray. I'm going to secure the top quarterback in this division. You can debate whether or not in real life he or Stafford's a better quarterback, but I think for fantasy, it's easily Kyler. So I'm going to secure my quarterback. And then with my second pick, it's really tough. Again, I don't want to take a receiver because of how deep I think they are. It's really between who I think the top running back is in Cam Akers or George Kittle, because he's a phenomenal fantasy tight end. I think I'm going to secure Cam Akers because I really think the running backs in this division are not very good, and he's the best of them.
Okay.
All right.
Back to you, Zach.
Yeah, I think those are pretty good picks. And I'm looking at 2 guys right now. I'm looking at George Kittle. I'm looking at Matt Stafford right now. Matt Stafford is easily the second best quarterback in this division, but George Kittle, you're getting an amazing tight end there. But I really need a safe quarterback pick here. I'm going to go Matt Stafford to lead the stacked Rams offense. I mean, he's got plenty of weapons. He's going to be a sleeper in most leagues to be like one of those top quarterbacks. But if you get him late in your draft, I think he can be your QB1 in fantasy this year. So I like taking Matt Stafford a little early here just to make sure I don't get Geno Smith, Drew Lock, or Trey Lance, who's a bit of a wild card to me.
Yeah, so that's 5 picks and 2 quarterbacks already. You don't see a lot of that going on in these drafts.
No.
It's back to me, and I'm excited about the opportunity of taking George Kittle. I'm also excited about DeAndre Hopkins because, let's be honest, when he comes back, they're going to be pressing. So, he'll be – I can't take them both around because I already have a wide receiver. So, I'm going to go ahead and go Hopkins. I just think Kittle's the injuries that he's had, it's been a little rough there, and so I'm going to go there. Now, I would normally just take the quarterback, but I don't have to take a quarterback because you 2 have taken your quarterbacks. I have James Conner. I have Eli Mitchell. It's pretty ugly. That's for sure. I think I'm going to go Eli Mitchell because I don't want that many Cardinals because I just don't think it's going to be a great year for them. So give me Eli Mitchell. I'm hoping with that gaggle of it's the second time I use that word in this podcast of mediocre running backs they have with the 49ers that he steps up and shows he can be the one. And when I say mediocre running backs, you also have Trey Lance who's going to run the ball. So give me Eli Mitchell. He'll be my RB1.
Nice. I mean, George Kittle has just fallen into my lap. That's probably the best flex option left. I mean, in past years, we probably would all be looking at, DK Metcalf as an elite option. But, I mean, with those quarterbacks, you're not really sure how he's going to do. I'm actually looking at this Niners depth chart. I recognize Trey Sermon. Everyone was so high on Trey Sermon last year. You guys remember when Trey Sermon was like the talk of the town? He's going to be so good. But no, I'm going to take George Kittle here, shore up that flex position. So I got Deebo Samuel, George Kittle, and Matt Stafford.
All right. To you, Jack, your last two picks.
My last two picks. All right. Well, my plan of waiting on receivers worked because I think that the ones that are on the board here are basically just as good as the ones that are on the board at my last pick. So I'm more than happy with that. And I think I'm going to snag two of these guys here because the running backs are kind of gross. And the only viable tight end option is Zach Ertz. And I think I'd rather bet on the receivers. So I'll take DK Metcalf first. I think that's just because he is the best player out of all the ones that are here. And although he is a Seahawk and that's kind of gross, I would I'm going to bet on the talent rather than the situation. So I'll go with that. And then the second one is it's really between either Allen Robinson now with the Rams or Hollywood Brown, who's going to be really nice, I think, at least in the first 6 weeks while Hopkins is hurt. That's tough. I don't want to put too much stock into the Cardinals because I really don't believe in them, but Allen Robinson has also not been so good the past few years, although I believe that's a product of him being a Bear.
Right.
I'm going to go with Allen Robinson, though, because I'm gonna bet on the fact that in a much, much better offense with a much, much better scheme for him, he'll have a better season.
And he's had a great camp, and I think he's finally rejuvenated, ready to go. I think he's a huge steal if you can get him in your fantasy football draft. And I didn't want him to go undrafted in this group, so I'm glad you took him. Going to you, Zach, you have to take a running back.
Yeah, I mean, the running backs left are pretty ugly, but I am going to go with James Conner just because he's the starting running back. I was looking at Darrell Henderson, but I feel like James Conner has a bit of upside for early season right now, considering that DeAndre Hopkins is going to be out for 6 games. His numbers don't really look good for production, honestly. I'm not going to be taking him in most drafts when I'm actually drafting fantasy, but since he's pretty much the de facto best option here besides an insurance back, I'm going to take James Conner, even though I don't like exactly how his production pans out.
Okay. And look, he had a real great start to the season last year. I think
he had a real great start, but most of his
production, then he fell off a cliff.
The only thing is most of his production came within the red zone, and that's pretty unreliable. But 80% of the field, you're not getting nearly as much production as any other back. So, I mean,
he gets a lot of rushing yards stolen by Kyler Murray for sure. So,
I mean, fair. To be fair, yes, but still, to have only your production be in 20-yard ranges, it's not really reliable. But he's the best left, and he'll produce somewhat. I'm just not going to be taking him high.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so it's back to me. I have to take a quarterback. Obviously, I'm not taking anyone from Seattle. So taking Trey Lance. Trey Lance is such an exciting potential player. In my home redraft league, or my home keeper league, every 5 years we put everybody back in and we start over. I have the 4th overall pick. There's obviously, and quarterback is such a key piece to that league. I'm just so intrigued by Trey Lance. I would never take him at 4th overall. There's better quarterbacks with potential to succeed this year, but he is really exciting. I think he's going to be a great player, and I think by week 3. People are going to be, grabbing him if they don't already have him stashed. So I like having him. So the rundown, I have Trey Lance, Elijah Mitchell, Cooper Kupp, and DeAndre Hopkins. Zach, you went with Stafford, Connor, Deebo Samuel, and George Kittle. And Jack bringing up the rear, I believe, with Kyler Murray, David Akers. See, I've been hanging out with Zach.
David Akers, Eagles legend, baby.
Great pick in Cam Akers, I should say. DK Metcalf and Allen Robinson. I think this is our first one we've done where it's like a bunch of, everybody's like got weaknesses, but, not like where you had to pick a
decent
Houston
team.
receiver.
Yeah.
Like I would actually field most of my team on a real fantasy squad. Like I would actually field this team.
Yeah.
Right. So thanks, guys. We're going to pivot over to my interview I did with Jacob Steinberg last week, a Lost Tribe athlete, baseball player. You'll learn all about where he plays, what his walk-up song is, and how he answers our primary question of should pineapple belong on pizza. So stay tuned for that. Jack and Zach, thank you. I'm going to sign off from you right now and go to that. What is up, everyone? Welcome back. Pass the Rock interview series. We have another Lost Tribe athlete. And for those of you out there that don't know, Lost Tribe Athletics is your Jewish home for everything sports, the official sports branch of Lost Tribe. We are live tweeting every night of what's going on in national sports, what's going on at Maccabi of late, and just everything sports 24/7, 365. I'm excited to be joined today by Jacob Steinberg. Jacob, how are you doing today?
Doing well. I appreciate you having me on.
Yeah, so I think you're the fourth or fifth Lost Tribe athlete that we've interviewed, and excited to have you. How did you first hear about Lost Tribe Athletics, and how'd you get involved?